All right, and hello everybody. Welcome back to another stream from the Endless Summer UAE. This one is a bit of another bittersweet stream as we're going to be saying goodbye to our awesome Kuthban team here on the finale stream today. So we're going to go around the room here and introduce everybody, and then I'm going to let them get right into it and talk about the game, their experiences this summer, and we may even see some footage of the pre-built alpha. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm going to leave it off to you guys. So take it away and introduce yourselves once again to the audience here.
Hi guys, my name's Shama. I'm the production lead on the Kuthban team. I'm super excited to be on the stream today, but also super sad for it being the finale stream.
Hello everyone, my name is Panya. I am a programmer for Kuthban. I also work on UI and UX design and implementation.
Hello, I'm Mohammed bin Naman. I'm the creative lead and level designer for Kuthban, and so excited to have you here for our final stream.
Hello, my name is Zumair, and I'm the arts lead for the Kuthban team. And as everyone else, I'm extremely excited for this stream today, and kind of sad as well for this being the last stream. And now I'm going to take it back to Shama to start the entire thing.
So today we're going to essentially be talking about the process of how we came up with the concept of our game and eventually the challenges that each of us undertook and some inspiration and roadblocks along the way as well. So for those of you who have been watching our earlier streams, our game did start out as essentially a collection of mini games. And that was the main idea we had. So we were working with this concept of having a game that is based on UAE culture. So we wanted to include all these different aspects of UAE culture, which are very multifaceted. But along the way, and I'm sure my other teammates can also talk more about this later, there was a lot of scheduling issues that came up with trying to implement a game that's so interactive yet also culturally tied. So we wanted to have a sort of balance between how fun the game is and how relevant it is to our core concept, which is about the UAE. So we found ourselves having to simplify the game and moving to a more, directed plan, which was focusing on the rally game from our mini games that we had came up with. But this ended up being sort of like a happy mistake, I would say. We ended up also bringing the same idea of having this multifacetedness of different environments in the UAE. So from desert to seas to new cities, old cities, we wanted to include the variety that the UAE has. So even within our rally game, we still wanted to translate the themes of how multidimensional the UAE is. And that was the main, inspiration for each of us in this team. Each of us being from very different cultural backgrounds, very different countries. The same theme of variety translates even throughout our game, even though it's through environment. But that's something that I think each of us resonates with in a way. So once we finally decided, let's have, a rally game, we were like, well, what's the story? And for us, the story was sort of how the UAE went from being very nomadic to this now bustling city. And it's a very insane trajectory for a country to take. So for us, the way we could present this was essentially through a rally track, because a rally track is based around speed, and this idea of speed is this. It's a constant repetition in the theme of the UAE, from moving from this nomadic city to where it is now. It happened all so quickly, and we wanted to really implement that in our game and have that kind of make up the structure of our game. And I'm sure Mohammed or Panya can also talk more about how the programming sort of not mimicked, but like exemplified this process as well. So yeah, let me know, you guys, what was your process with that?
Yeah, I think I could go first with it. Yeah, it's definitely a journey to like create this game. We first started out as a completely different project, then we geared towards a singular focus on making a rally game that represents essentially the duality of UE. While you're racing in the desert, you still have these, industrial things like windmills and like modern age stuff with the old mountains and desert dunes. So yeah, it was definitely a pretty fun journey across 6 months programming, making it, designing everything related to and representing what essentially what UE is. And yeah, we had some fun times, we had some challenges. Some things were a bit annoying, some things were a bit fun, but I think overall at the end it was a pretty amazing learning experience. We all got to do things that we really loved in like game development and the creative process of actually making something entertaining. And well, if you're gonna ask something specific, I think more or less in the creative process for me, I really enjoyed the level designing because I had to put my mind to how would I represent the UE as well as making a course or a track that's very fun and intuitive as a gameplay perspective. So I needed to balance both aesthetics of actually showing, this is what the UE is. It's modern, but it also has tradition. But at the same time, I want to make something that isn't just focusing on the narrative, but also focusing on what makes the game fun, or what's the enjoyability of also indulging in such narrative. So I think that was a very fun experience, and that's one of the highlights I had while making Kuthban. If anyone else wants to join in, they could also.
I just want to add that I remember making the first game, like the first prototype, and it was completely different from the one we have now. It was one of the mini games. We made it like we made like less than 50%. But it was working. But then we changed it completely to a rugby game. It was very like sad to like change from our first main idea. But then after we started working on the rugby game, we started like to find joy in it as well because we worked on similar things. Like for me, mainly I worked on the user interface. So like I tried to kept things really similar, like making things simple. So I don't think it's like much like a big difference between the first prototype versus this one. But overall, it was a really fun process, like trying new things, trying to see what fits with what we want to do, and try to like find the correct theme for like the whole thing. Because I think like we really want to like keep like thing in a very tight theme of the UAE. So that's like the plan.
And it almost kind of starts to feel like relics as well, like the old like games that you started working on. They feel very archival in a way. At least that's how it felt to me. Like when we like made our first Google Drive folder with the concept art part 1, part 2, part 3. I was just like uploading a bunch of images, and I was like, Omer, I need sketches for this and that and this. And I think Omer probably relates to that a lot, in that we felt very attached to the concept of it because we had put so much like effort and passion into it. It felt like very fresh and new to us. How did you feel, Omer?
Yeah, definitely. It was a very good experience, especially like starting from the first mini games. Like I was, it was the first time I was making anything in like low poly art, so it was completely new to me. So I made something like an oil rig and I don't know, some rocks, snake. Um, it was a fun experience because Shama actually had to sketch something, sketch an idea, and sometimes it wouldn't make any sense, and I would then go to Noman. I was like, uh, because I've known Noman for like the past, I don't know, 3-4 years. So it's so I asked Noman like, what do you understand by this? Because I didn't want to go to Shama and tell her that I don't know what you made. But it was a fun experience, and we all I guess improved in our way to show how what it is. And I mean, it's been a really good process for me, to be honest, learning how to do poly art. And in fact, now I'm much more comfortable. I also remember once I was making a gazelle in a low poly style, and it was extremely difficult. I couldn't understand with what exactly I was making, and I made something which personally didn't make any sense to me as well. And I was like, this does not seem right. And I asked like Noman and others as well, and I showed to them. They were like, this does not really look like low poly and everything. So just probably building that skill, it was extremely important for me as well, because not only for the game, but it's a good skill to have, and it adds to your like perspective and how you can see things, and it's actually been a really fruitful process for me. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually just from that process of our concept phase being so hectic in a way, I think it kind of made us question though who our audience is, because even for me, like I, as a Namarati, I have so much like parts of the culture that I wanted to share and like show in the game. So I was super excited to be like, okay, guys, let's put this in, let's put that in. So yeah, I definitely see how it could have been so confusing to see like a sketch at first of like a grandmother doing the old embroidery, which we call telly, and I was sketching it out and I was like trying to explain. I was like, so she kind of like braids this and that. It's like braiding fabric, and you're like, uh-huh. But at one point that gets you to question though, like, who is our audience? Who are we making this game for? Are we making this game for a foreign audience? Are we making this game for people who are culturally aware of the UAE? I guess in the end, we ended up directing our game more towards something that everyone knows. Everyone knows what rally racing is, and I guess if they didn't, then yeah. But mostly everyone knows. And then we tied that to the environments in the UAE, and that kind of makes them sort of relate and understand more about the UAE in a way without it being too forced or like feel like it's a classroom setting, like, oh, this is part of this and this is the environment in the UAE. It's just something that kind of comes intuitively to them like along the process. And I really like that about our game. I think that feels very unique and wholesome in a way. And I think that's kind of what makes other games stand out from each other, is when you like learn more about something, you learn more about like the history of a game, just these general background knowledge that surrounds a game without feeling like it's being fed to you. It just comes along the way. And I think that's super special. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you because I think I learned a lot from you through the process because you told a lot of stories about UAE that I don't know before. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And then I was like, okay, let's put that in a game. And that's why we like came up with the idea of like mini games, because I have so many ideas that like very interesting, but kind of like separate from each other. That's why like we wanted to make so many games. And like thinking back, like I'm not sure whether we were able to. I think like before we started making the game, I think we were able to do all those like 7 mini games. And now working on this like one rally game, like it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of like hard work to perfect the small details. So I think it's a good idea that we like switch to the rally game.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I found out between all of your conversation is another really important skill that I think everyone here learned is like communication between like team members. Like even while Umair was telling about like Shamma telling you what concept art to make, and then Shamma draws something, you're like, oh, what's going on? Can somebody like explain what is this? It brings a really important perspective of like communication and communicating with the team, and also communicating with the audience. Like, yeah, I also at the start found myself really hard to tell, what exactly to make. I'm like, hey, Pani, I need a checkpoint system, but the checkpoint system should be like this. But Pani's like, how should be? I'm like, wait, I just told you how it should be, but why aren't you understanding? Then it comes like, you need to, I don't know, it's hard to put it, but it's a really innate skill to actually gain, to tell someone how you are thinking, to tell someone what you want. And I think everyone here, in a way, learned how to properly communicate and how to properly project what their vision is towards other teammates, so we can all collaborate and think under one roof. Besides, me like, oh, Shama, I need, I don't know, animals in the game, and Shama like puts, I don't know, elephants and gazelles, and I didn't need that. I meant smaller creatures and stuff like that. But I think all of this also highlights really important skills of actually communicating with each other, because if there's no collaboration, then there's no video game. And even in an industry like video games or any interactive industry, I think communication is a really big part, especially when everyone has their unique skill that they bring to the game.
Totally. And I think even like communicating, I think we formed our own sort of like language of communication, where we went from like, even if we send like each other 10 emails per day, we can still not get the point of what we need. But I think we have a really good communication in terms of we understand what the other person will need without that much of an explanation anymore. Like it comes so easy. Like I remember at the start I was like spamming people with like voice notes and spamming the group chat with like paragraphs. But now it's so much easier. And I'm like, okay, stream this week, Wednesday, who? and everyone like gets the point. Everyone gets what's going on. And it's really nice having a team that feels like very understanding of each other's communication skills without having to put that much I guess description into it. It's just like you said, it's an innate skill. It's something you hone in on.
Yeah, exactly. It did take us some time, I would say, like, especially, for example, the very first task I remember, Numan told me to, design a track. So I created something. I didn't know what exactly he wanted, to be honest. I just made a very simple track. It was just like a loop or something. It was like this. He didn't want to say that the track is too bad. He was just like, I guess you can make something better. And I don't know what exactly does he mean. Like, I can make anything, and there's a lot of references. I mean, I can pick up a particular track, or maybe get an inspiration from some track back in my home country as well. But I had no idea what he actually wants or something. So, like, trying to understand the other teammate, I guess it developed during this project. Like now, if Shama tells me to design this, I'll just immediately get it, and I would exactly know the exact the color kind of thing, and the proportion of the torso and the head. I exactly know the head should be this big or something. So like it's I mean, we now kind of understand each other without actually having to tell each other, because it's kind of this skill has been developed, and it wasn't how it was at the start of the project. And I guess this is really good.
Yeah, so sort of from this topic, I guess, I wanted to start of like kind of steer our conversation towards like the challenges that we each had. I mean, I know like communication was a big one, of course, because we're a group working on a project together. I think communication and group compatibility will always be a huge challenge when working on anything as a group. For me, aside from communication, I guess it was working on the references for the NPCs. That felt super challenging, surprisingly, mainly because I didn't really think of the fact that you'd have to consider cultural stereotypes, and you'd have to consider like the country's dress code. So for example, if you made like NPCs for the UAE, they typically have to be dressed in more modest clothing, but also at the same time, it's still very international. People are still wearing whatever they want to wear, but you're not going to have the same NPCs from GTA in the UAE, for example. So that kind of was like a struggle for me, having to describe what the NPCs should be wearing to the art house. I was like, jeans, t-shirt, regular clothing, but not like bikinis on the on the NPCs. And also we want like traditional Emirati clothing. So this is the thobe, blah blah blah. Especially for an art house that's not based in the UAE, it was super complicated trying to explain the Emirati dress. And I had to look up so many different like references, just because there's so many different types of Emirati clothing. I didn't think like I didn't think it would be that complicated to represent it in one or two characters. It had to be like very, I guess, very representative for a lot of the people, because it kind of felt like I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't make their clothings representative, because that is a part of the UAE and the people, just everyone being so diverse and everyone being so like multicultural. I wanted that to show in the NPCs, not only through Emirati clothing, but even through their regular everyday clothing. But I want to hear from you guys what your challenges were specifically.
I can go first. For me, I guess one of the challenges was definitely like getting used to low body art style. As I mentioned, like I don't know designing a gazelle without a reference. So I actually wanted to kind of like test my limits and those kind of stuff, and I just didn't want a reference or any basis. And I was like, let's make a low body style gazelle or something. So that was quite confusing, and I had to then understand how it's done and learn from it. And I guess weirdly, I mean, the other challenge has always been getting used to Unity, because somehow I've always had issues with Unity. Sometimes there's like some conflicts that can't be resolved, and you just I sometimes just give up. I was like, I don't know what to do. I just might download the entire thing again, and that was an issue. But again, that's a different thing. But in terms of a skill, I guess like because I was quite new to Unity, and it did take me some time to get used to like the shader graphs, and so like bunch of tutorials. But once I did understand, I guess it's pretty good. It's been a good journey from then onwards.
I can go next. So I was working mainly with Muhammad. So like Muhammad would like make this like beautiful landscape and beautiful like mechanics for the cars. And then I sometimes like mess up with the game object, and then like I run his like landscape or core mechanics. I felt so bad about that. So like, I try not to do that. So I didn't need to like make so many prefabs, like copy of the scene so that I wouldn't mess that up, because I actually messed one up the landscape once. I felt so bad because like he worked like 6 hours on the landscape. So okay, that will never happen again. So I will spend like more time on Unity so I could prevent that from happening again. But it was like it was not that bad, because I actually found a way to make sure that I would not mess up the scene. So that was one of the challenge, but it's also like one of the skills that I learned. And other than that, for me, I think another challenge like focus on the small details, because like working on the user interface is about like the small details that matters a lot, because it's about like how to place the buttons, where to place it, and like how does it work, and how like they connect to each other. So it's like like a huge network of things linking to each other. So I need to make sure that they actually connected. So I need to like run them like so many times with different scenes. So it takes a lot of time, but it's fun somehow.
Yeah, so I mean, I could take a stab at programming, but I think Mpani is a lot more masterful than I am when it comes to programming. So, I mean, majority of the time I spent was actually thinking of what the game should be like and designing the levels. And both of them were challenging at times, especially when originally trying to come up with like how the game should look like. Now, oh, it's now a rally game. Now I must think how a rally game should look like. Oh, me taking out references, YouTube videos. I'm like, this is so complex. How should we simplify it down? How should we make changes to make it possible within the time frame we have? And then also thinking about, okay, so we only can make like 3 or 4 levels. So what those 3 or 4 levels should be that exactly nail down the aesthetic of the UAE, and also make it very interesting to play all these 3 levels. I mean, as in providing very unique experiences, because we're right now shifted from quantity to more quality experiences. So I think managing that and thinking of like rattling my brain and oh, what should this be? Should the second stage be this? Then I draw some rough sketches. Then I'm like, no, it looks so trash. Just throw it away. Then I'm like, oh, what should I do? Then just randomly googling stuff until I come across something that is really like interesting. But even if it's not, even if I come across the idea like, okay, I need to make a desert rally stage, was the second level. Actually decorating the stage, I've done like level design before, but not at this scale where I've done like full levels with like extreme detail, with like every cone and every like small lamp being placed on its own. It was a bit exhausting at times, and sometimes I would just do level design for like 3-4 hours, and I'm fully tired. I'm like, what is this? I just placed like 10% of the level, 90% is left. But in due time, I realized how to make it faster. What's smarter design? Sometimes less means more. Oh, how could I essentially put some things on the stage as decorations, but they mean a lot more than me just adding very small details just to make it look cooler.
No, those are very valid points, I think. Along with trying to like focus what you should work on first, I think even in games where there's like different levels, you're never really done. Like one problem shows you that there's another problem, then you're like, oh, and it kind of like has this like cycle where you're just kind of like looking at different things that come up that you didn't kind of think of at the start. And I think that's super challenging for us, even just because even as a game developing group, we're still at our very early stages. We're not like senior developers or anything. So I feel like throughout every stage of the process, we had to consider our own skill sets and what we can feasibly do. Like, I'm sure we would all have loved to make like a very immersive rally racing experience with like extra mods and features and whatnot, like a long list of expansive things. But at the end of the day, we had to actually assess what we could do and what we want to do and sort of balance those two things and make it into a game that at the end of the day we feel proud about. And on that note, I'm really excited to show everyone the first build of our game. So Mohammed, can you take it away?
Yes, just give me a moment. Let me just pull it out and change screens.
Super excited.
Once we get this up here, I'll let you guys know when it's up on screen.
So in the meanwhile, I just wanted to let everyone know though that we still have some minor fixes here and there that we are gonna work on until we have the final version. But this is kind of like the first final version. There's still multiple iterations of that. There's final 1, final 2. But yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone can see the screen. But yeah, here's the first alpha build of Kuthban. I don't know if you can hear music at all. Nope. All right, that's fine. You could see it when you guys downloaded yourself. So after the homepage, you have the lovely selection of 3 tracks. You have the mountain rally track, you have the desert rally track, and then you have essentially a dock rally track. So yeah, let's jump in first and foremost to the first track. So right away, we have this really cool car selection screen. So a good thing we managed to do is cram in somehow 20 cars into the game with each unique, performances and handling mechanics. So you have this cute, cuddly car. You have another version of it tuned for off-roading, Jeeps, cool spy cars, Lamborghinis, off-road Lamborghinis. The list goes on and on. Even race trucks. I mean, one of the things when we were researching was like in Dubai, we have actual racing trucks, like the modified trucks to race around. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let's add that in also. So you have some cool cars, even some cool transitions for the bigger cars. There are some visual bugs here and there with the lighting, but nothing significant in terms of mechanics. So yeah, I mean, what cars do you guys want to pick? Any car?
Let's go with this one.
Okay, this one.
Guys,
we
I'm
are
so
going
sorry.
with
I think we're having an issue with the screen share here. I hate to say it, but do we mind restarting it? It's not feeding through and no one's seeing the cars here, so I want to make sure they're seeing everything before we get too into it.
Okay, seems like we have an error. Let's restart. How about now?
Bear with me, everybody. I'm going to link this back up here, and hopefully we can see that again. All right, it should be feeding through now, guys. Sorry about that.
All right. Hopefully you guys can see the car selection screen. So, yep, let's jump right in. So as the rally stage goes, the moment the countdown strikes 0, the timer starts, and you have to make it to the very end. Some nice twists and turns, first through a small town area, and then you start your climb up the mountain. There are some minor visual glitches here, which the lighting is sort of dimmed out, but that's a minor issue we can fix. Essentially, it's a pretty long track, so anyone can comment over if they want to join in.
Just looking.
Oh, sorry to jump back in here, guys. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just unfortunately, we're not getting this feed here for the screen share. So sorry to the viewers as well. We're having some internet issues getting that feed running through to you guys. So apologies for that. I'm so sorry, Mohammed, there with the screen share. But we're gonna see if we can get that fixed here in the meantime. Maybe we can go over some of the. We can talk about a bit about the different types of cars there and the car selection in the meantime here.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So I think the main starting point of our cars, we didn't have like a specific car in mind. So one thing we thought of doing was let's ask actual rally race drivers and race drivers in general, which cars stand out to them the most. And so we asked a student from our university, Hamdal Kubesi, who's in racing, like what's the most notable car and the most notable features of rally racing cars. So we kind of did like this mini interview where she spoke a lot about the main racing drivers, the Dakar rally races, and from that we did a bit more research and we found like the rally race cars, which like they don't really have one specific look. The main thing, I guess, that like brings them all together is that a lot of them are very like very modified. There's a lot of stickers on all of the cars. It can be essentially any car as long as it has like good acceleration features, good drift features. That's what kind of differentiated them. We did have like one beginning concept image, which was one of the Abu Dhabi racing cars. So we kind of used that as like a base start, but then from there, we just started to include any car that we thought like would be drivable in this way, because there really is no specific car that you can rally race with, because rally races didn't start in this formal manner. They started very informally. And that was kind of the magic of rally races, is that anyone, anywhere would race any car, as long as you have the ability to do so. And we wanted to bring back this kind of nostalgic aspect of rally racing, which I guess now is more fictional in our game, because you're not going to see like people driving like semi-trucks in a rally race now. I mean, there could be semi-truck rally races, but it's just not common to see. But it still felt more gamified and more fun to just experience a rally race with multiple different cars, not specific to the constraints of the real world. But that was kind of where we started off on for the choices of racing cars, because even if we limited it, to what would actually be drivable in a rally race in the real world, we'd only end up with like 4 or 5 cars, which that essentially look kind of similar, which I guess gets kind of boring. So that's why we were just like, no, let's just make it any cars. As long as we have a couple that like represent rally racing in the real world, that should be good. Then we want other cars for people to have fun with. But yeah, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, that's the point. Like the game should be fun. So I mean, we added some off-road cars. We added some cars that are a bit iconic. For example, we have a Polyphony Daytona in it. Even though it's not a rally car, it's a track car. So after adding all those off-road cars and even the odd, obscure, nostalgic semi-racing truck car, we were like, let's just add things that people actually like to drive. Maybe a Lamborghini. But let's take another step further. Maybe there's an off-road Lamborghini, but let's just customize it and make it look like it's off-road. Raise the suspension up, give it different tires, remove the bumpers and stuff, and essentially add a bit of variety. We even have a spy car in the game. So when you play the build, it's just a special car to have fun around. It has half the gravity of a normal car, so in the desert rally style, just fly around the dunes more, and it's a bit different. It's not essentially rally, but it's also this additional mode, additional avenue to have fun with the game after you're done with the more serious like rally cars. Let's just have fun. Let's have maybe a Formula One car, which is also in the game. Let's just zoom around that on a rally track. You'll never see a Formula car on a rally track because
On that note, actually, so for the people watching this stream, I want to ask a question that gives them the privilege to know. Is there any specific car that was programmed to be faster than the others? So, like, which car should a player choose that would make them get a higher score?
So, in a way, I programmed their values is you could pick the fastest car, which is obviously the Formula One car. But I made it in a way, it's really hard to drive. You need to be really good at driving. You need to have really good gamer skills, or else the car will just go flying off the mountain. So I added the opportunity, you could go boot up the game, pick the Formula One, but you would most probably crash on the second corner because you're not that much experienced in the game yet. But I have the option of you training up with the other cars slower than faster until you have the skill or you have the track knowledge to now tackle it with a really faster car. And I think that's what is in rally. It's just beating your personal record. It's just going faster and faster.
Yeah. It's also funny that when I was actually like making some shader effects, like shader graph, using the shader graph, so I actually normally just use the F1 racing car. So I was kind of used to that, and then after a while I switched to some other car. I was like, why is this so slow? Like the F1 would just like fly away. It was too quick. But I would normally not care about whether it collided or not, because I would just actually care about the effects. But again, that car, it was very difficult to work with because the turns and everything, you just have to almost stop and then turn, otherwise you're just gonna crash. So it was difficult actually working with that car as well. But yeah, it was actually fun.
Yeah, I can confirm that. Like, because I was like testing the car, so like that was the best car to test because it really like crashed into the dead zone, so I could get like the UI UX like very quickly. So I can select they have to go down so quickly, so I need to start it again. So that's like the best way to like test all the UIs, and then it's also like if you die so many times, also I increase the timer. So it doesn't matter how fast the car is, because if you keep dying, then the timer will be like will be still high. So I don't know if that's the best choice for like you to start with. So, but you can try. It's all like all the cards are open to be played, so it's not locked or anything.
No, that's that's totally relatable, and I guess unfortunately, while we couldn't like share what that looks like in our game, I hope everyone can still stay tuned for the launch of Kuthban and see what we're talking about in first person. But I guess on that note, I also wanted us to go around and kind of talk about what we would improve on, like, in another world. If we had much more time to work on this, what would you guys have changed or done differently or added?
Well, that's a pretty diverse list. When I start thinking about it, I'm like, oh, we had so many things to think about, but we had to cut down the list. Okay, let's start from big things. So originally I had an idea. I didn't put it on the board, but I had the idea after we were done with like 3-4 tracks, let's add a fun game mode. Because in many like simulation games, they have this very whimsical game mode. And for example, in Gran Turismo, there's a game mode called Coffee Break, in which you take a small tiny car and you run over traffic cones, and if you hit 100 traffic cones then you win. I'm like, that sounds just fun. It's really small wacky mini game. And another one is like you take a big truck and you just drive it through walls. I'm like, it has nothing to do with rally, but it's a pretty good break from rallying to just enjoy this 1 or 2 minute scoop of stupid fun. But I mean, as someone mentioned in the stream earlier, a game is never done, a stage is never complete. Anything, you always want to add more, you always want to improve upon it. But that's the same thing I'll say. I just want to go and add more details, make it more personalized, make it more cooler, add more personality to the cards, even though they are personalized, or add some other effects, other quirky stuff to them.
Yeah, from the arts perspective, I would say like definitely there are a lot of effects that we can add. We definitely just stick to the basics, I guess. But there's a lot of extra things that we can test. For example, I don't know, testing screen shake with some other effect, and maybe just trying out different effects, because that's how it's gonna make it different from other games. Because normally you would always just either want to like a NOS or like a boost kind of thing, an effect for that, or maybe for on collision you just want like a screen shake kind of thing. But we if we had time, I would look into something that is not too mainstream, but something that kind of defines our own style. But obviously that would like require thinking of how to make it fun, and not you just look at it and you're like, what the heck, like what is this? So thinking of coming up with something I believe it's pretty intense, because when you don't know what to do, like it's just coming up with something, an idea, it's pretty tough. And the other stuff, other part, if we had more time, I would definitely we would work on maybe adding like more tracks and expanding the game a bit, so like you could play more, I guess. So far, like it's pretty good. The tracks are really good, but like if we had more time, maybe more tracks, I guess, because I believe the number of cars, they're already good enough. We probably don't really have to work on it again. So there's a lot of cars, but yeah, more tracks. Maybe some of them are like kind of loops again and again. Some of them like just coming from a mountain. Maybe some in the during this it has a sea on the other side or something like that. It's a lot of variations, but we had to specifically think of UE in our mind, so that also kind of it was an obstacle, I think, because there were like we could only think of very few tracks that would actually represent the UE culture as well, while also like making it fun, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like more tracks would be nice. But for me personally, I think I can like work more on the UI, because now I think the UI is kind of very basic for me. It is very simple. It's like easy for the users to use and navigate around. But I think like my goal is like that the UI from the God of War, like it's like very like the UI is like very fluid. It's like part of the game itself. So when the users like actually click on the play, it's like it moves like immediately into the game itself. So it feels like the UI is not there. So like the UI is actually part of the game. So it makes things more like translates more smoothly. So I really like that. I think there like could be more like details added to the game as well. Like we have like idea of like adding the core driver where like it gives the users the direction, like where to go, like where to turn and which direction to turn. So I think we could work on that, but I don't think we have the time because it's like very specific for each of the track. I need to like put you need to put like those like hint at different locations. So it would take a lot of time, but I think it would be really like nice and would be really helpful for the players to help the players navigate in the game.
That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
no,
definitely. The co-driver one was really, we planned it out. I even asked Shama to maybe had at one point dialogue recorded for it, and Pani was going to work on it, but sadly, it was gonna take a very long time, and we couldn't implement it in the time we had left. But yeah, if there was time, that would be fun. The co-driver would tell you directions and would yell at you if you crash or something, like, "Oh, what are you doing? You're supposed to go this way. You went the other way." It could have been a more fun twist, but well, you can't have all your eggs.
No, that's so true. Like I got so excited there because Panya mentioned one of my favorite games, God of War, and I really, really wanted to like have our game be more theatrical in that same sense. I mean, I'm also like a film major, so I feel like I always kind of have to bring in this wow and like cinematic aspect into everything. So I really wish like if we had more time that we could have done, for example, like remember you guys like the animation we wanted to have at the start and end before, like that would have been really cool to have like a cinematic animation at the start and at the end, and like Panya said, like to a point where the UX and the UI feels like very like it kind of feels like a show at one point. It's not you're just clicking a button. It's you're being part of this kind of world. And I feel like, yeah, adding like the soundtracks, even just choosing out like the simple sound that plays at the start screen, at the end screen, I was really tempted to just be like, okay guys, let's add this in. I want us to add more like cinematics in, let's add more soundtracks. But yeah, like Mohammed said, there's unfortunately only so much you can do in a specific amount of time. But definitely with more time, I'd love to imagine a version of our game where we were able to add in this cinematic aspect. But yeah, I guess on that note, does anyone have anything else they'd want to add about the game? Just before we start to wrap things up a bit. Any comments, any final commentary or statements to the audience?
We might be putting out a build soon before we publish a final version as for feedback. So I would really, it would be really nice if we could get your feedback on track design, the feel of the cars. And so it can gear our last 2 weeks on the game to a more refined stage and we know what to exactly nail down if something doesn't work. But yeah, I think that's all.
All right, then. Please keep an eye out then for this build and play test for us and let us know what we can fix. We're super proud of our game and we really want to make it the best of our abilities. So yeah, thank you for following us throughout this process and watching our streams and hopefully playing our game. But thank you for joining us in general.
And we have one last comment here, guys, if we want to answer this question before we sign off. Faris from Algarub asks, will you guys be working on the game further after this deadline?
Good question.
That's a very interesting question. Never thought of that.
I mean, personally, I like the amount of things that we actually want to do. For example, when they're gonna guide us to like the next road, or maybe like take a turn left, or those kind of stuff. it's very tempting, to be honest. We actually want to think of completing it maybe, and do our like best. So maybe there's a chance, but we're not really sure yet. I guess we'll have to look at our schedules and everything as well. So
We'd have to come back together like a broken up rock band. We'd have to bring our powers back together and see what we can do. So I guess you'll never know until the band gets back together. But if there is, are there any more questions or comments? I guess not. But yeah, maybe we come back together as a band. I mean, you'll see us on campus if you go to NYU, and then you might know and let the spoiler out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching our stream today. And yeah, from the whole of Kuthban team, thank you. Bye-bye.